Testing, testing.
Hello? All right. We are about to get started. Everyone excited for spring break? Yeah. All right. Did anyone get any tests on the last day? 'Cause I know if you're in crypto, you might have an exam today. No? Were they bad? All right. That's good. At least you're not stressing on the last few days before you go. All right. We are good to start the meeting, guys. Welcome to RITSEC. Make sure you guys join the Discord if you have not. Also, make sure you sign in. The sign in is dropped. So, you're going to clap? All right, sorry. The sign in is dropped. Make sure you guys click the sign in, and you will get pizza later today. Also, check our calendar for any events that are coming up. Also, join the RITSEC mailing list. Now, guys, clap it up for the sponsors. All right, thank you guys. Make sure you guys follow our social media, and time for announcements. Make sure you guys have a good spring break. That's all we got today. All right, and now I will present incident response. And thank you guys for showing up. Of course. All right, who am I? I am Adam Braccia. I am a fourth year in cybersecurity. I am graduating this May or August, so this is my last semester. I am currently the head of education, so you might have seen me present intro to cybersecurity or intro to artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. And I currently work at SRA as a CyberSoc consultant intern, so I will kind of be presenting about what I do as a CyberSoc analyst. And I also like to play guitar and harmonica and play some sports like hockey and golf. All right, let's get started. I figured to make this presentation more like scenario and picture based, so you guys don't have to read bullets on there. I'll just do a lot of the talking, and you can look at the pretty pictures. All right, guys, picture this. You are working in a healthcare company. There's over 500 employees. Everyone has a laptop, and you have a small cybersecurity team of a CISO, two cybersecurity analysts, a vulnerability manager, and a network engineer, right? But there are threats in the healthcare industry. It is one of the most targeted industries, maybe because they can't afford the downtime. And there's all these different threats like ransomware, phishing, compromised credentials, third-party credentials, and data breaches they have to look out for. All right, now how do we protect our systems from these threats? You want to make sure you set up some endpoint protections, such as email protection, any antivirus, or EDR, which we will get into. You also want to set up some network protections. You want to make sure you're using virtual machines, and you want to have good configurations for that. Make sure you have secure virtual machine setup and configurations. Also, you want to make sure you have good firewall rules and VPN connections. These are just some of the examples of some network protections you might want. We also have user protections. You want to make sure you have a cybersecurity training program going out to all your employees. The biggest area or the biggest threat that you might have is from humans. There will always be risk there. So you want to make sure you have good cybersecurity training programs out. And you want to make sure you have good password managers and password usage, as well as multi-factor authentication or single sign-on. All these policies are important. So all this and more is managed by the SOC. Have you guys heard this term before? SOC? For those who are not familiar, what is a SOC? The SOC is a Cybersecurity Operations Center. This is the team that is responsible for the security posture, as well as preventing, detecting, and responding to threats, basically everything about the cybersecurity defense of a company. Some different functions of the cybersecurity, the Security Operations Center is threat monitoring and detection. You're going to want to analyze different alerts and make sure you monitor whatever threats come in. You'll also be following the incident response and containment lifecycle, which includes triage, deployment, mitigation, remediation, and incident review. I won't go too much. I won't go today into the NIST frameworks. I don't think anyone wants to sit through that, but there are some good resources online about this life cycle. You also want to have some log analysis and correlation. I'll get more into that. And you also want to make sure you have some good vulnerability management and remediation tools in place. All right, now what monitoring and endpoint software is involved to make sure you have all these configurations? You want to set up these 4 terms: EDR, XDR, SOAR, SIEM. I'll get into each one, slight overview. This might be a lot here. So first we'll go over SIEM. It's not SIEM, guys. If you guys think it's SIEM, you're saying it wrong. So SIEM is Security Information and Event Management. Let me figure out how to picture this for you guys. You have every device. Now, how would you determine how to make rules and how do you analyze the events that actually happen? You will set up a SIEM, which will ingest a bunch of different logs, whether it could be sign-ins, it could be like Windows events happening. You'll want to set up a SIEM that will collect all these, and collecting logs could be expensive. So you want to have other tools as well that make sure that it's scalable and something you can actually deploy, because you don't want to ingest every single log that you can get from what runs on a computer. You can also make dashboards on a SIEM and alerting notifications. You can make security alerts that will spawn in whenever you think something malicious might happen. You can also do querying based on the tool. I'll get into some of the tools, but there's I know CrowdStrike has one, SentinelOne has one, KQL has one, Jira has one, JQL. There's a bunch of different querying language where you can query the logs that you will ingest if you want to investigate an alert. So that's what the SIEM is for. SIEM is more about log analysis and collection. Now the SOAR, this is a tool that will bring all the other tools together. SOAR is Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. It's kind of in the name. Orchestration combines the tools. It's more about automating that. If you want to do a playbook that runs, if, let's say, you realize a user got hacked and you want to remediate that user, you can have an automatic playbook that runs that resets the user account or revokes any sessions. SOAR is type of like an automation and response type of tool. It can also be a good user interface for you that you can design with different dashboards. And the overall idea is that it's supposed to help you focus on higher priority and see more of a higher level. If you want to submit a report to a CISO, you want to give them numbers and you want to give them an overview. That's what you will get from the SOAR. And my first example I'll go over is Palo Alto's XSOAR. This is one of the more popular SOAR tools. I don't know if this picture is big enough for you guys to see it. Let me see. All right. So you can see on the left side, it says, no, the right side, sorry. You can see it says you can look through incidents, you can look through dashboards, you can also look through threat intel and create playbooks. This is a whole point of learning that I do not have to really know too much about this, but this is one of the tools I want to give you guys an overview. You can see they have different graphs about different severity of alerts. It's that one with the red. You can see critical, there's 68 critical, 72 high. On the bottom, you can also see different security incidents as well right here. And it can give you the status about what the status of that alert is, the type, whether it's phishing or malware. Yeah, and you can also see the name of the alert and the alert ID. So the SOAR, this Palo Alto SOAR is that's a visual for what that one is. And the next one we'll go over is EDR, which is the endpoint detection response. This kind of this is kind of like your antivirus, but it also is about log correlation, or sorry, it's also about querying and looking at logs from the endpoint specifically. Um, yeah, so as a second bullet, it combines continuous monitoring and collection of endpoint data with rule-based automated response and analysis capabilities. I'll go into an example so you guys know what I'm talking about. So here's Sentinel-1. Um, if you could tell on the top, very top right, it will say armor block underscore text.txt. That is the file that I got alerted on. You can see it says malicious and it was not mitigated. And this view is kind of the endpoint. So the SOAR, before we saw it, kind of gives an overview of the alert. And when you actually want to investigate the alert, you go into the EDR and actually look into the endpoint to see what happens. So this is where you'll investigate the alert. You can get the hash of the process. You can go through, it says explore, but sometimes there's a process timeline so you can see what happened. This is just one of the examples of one of the EDRs, but you will use EDR to investigate, and it's more about looking on the endpoint. So that's the main emphasis on EDR. It also gives you the host name right there too. So this is where you would look through to investigate an alert. All right, and one of the more bigger services is Microsoft XDR. Microsoft XDR is extended detection and response. It's a mix between SIM, SOAR, and EDR. It's just Microsoft's tools for defense. The four I'll get into today is Sentinel, Defender, Purview, and Entra. Sentinel is the SIM and the SOAR. The Defender for Endpoint is the EDR, and they combine for XDR. And Purview and Entra I'll get into in a little bit. But you might have seen that if you ever worked your internship yet, you might have used any of the Microsoft 365 products like Teams or Outlook or SharePoint. This is all part of the Azure package, and this is one of the probably the most popular defense softwares that they'll have one of the most, instead of having to buy different EDR like Sentinel-1 or Palo Alto XSOAR, you can just buy the Microsoft Azure package, which comes with not all these tools, but it comes with Defender, Entra, depending on how much you pay for it, but it's supposed to be one of the cheaper options because you're only buying from one source, you're not getting from like 3 different sources. Don't worry about this graph. It looks it looks like a lot. I'll only go into the 4 I said, but the idea is the Azure services has a lot that you could do with. So this is why it's one of the more popular, I guess, detection endpoint softwares you can use. And yeah, so you can also see that Microsoft XDR contains Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity. All those do a different purpose for you to investigate. It's kind of in the name, like Defender for Cloud will look for any cloud apps. 365, any emails or phishing, that will be analyzed through Office 365, Defender for Office. Defender for Endpoint could be any malware that's on a device. Defender for Identity is anything with user compromise. Yeah, so the first one I'll give you guys a visual on is Microsoft Sentinel. This is what it looks like. There's mixed reviews on how people feel about Microsoft Sentinel versus the other SIMs. Has anyone used Microsoft Sentinel before? No? All right, cool. Because when I previously worked at Carestream Health and Excelis, if you guys seen those buildings before in Rochester, I got my first taste of Microsoft Sentinel, and it's kind of cool that you could do anything like create workbooks, look through logs, also analyze alerts. This has everything in it. So the visual of what you're looking at here is the incidents page. You can see each different tab here is a different alert. Malicious credential, log, 4J vulnerability, terminal, whatever. So each tab here is a different alert, and when you click on it, the side box pops up where you can assign the alert to yourself right here. And it gives you description, and if you click full details, you can analyze the alert further. So this is Sentinel, Microsoft's SIM in the Azure platform. Now here's Defender. So you get, let me go back real quick. So you get this alert right here, and you want to investigate it further. You will then, usually right here it says click to view in Defender. So you click that, and then it brings you to Defender where you can analyze the alert further. It gives you a cool graph about what like right here in the middle, it gives you a cool graph about what users, what applications, what IPs are involved. It gives you a good timeline, and you can also view the exact events about what happened on the endpoint. Um, it's really cool. It's my favorite, I guess, out of all of them because it's the easiest to maneuver from. Um, on Defender, you're able to go. You could search up the host name in the search bar in the top, and then you can go to View Timeline, and and you can put in a specific time about when the alert happened, and you can view every single log that you got around that time to see what happened. So you have a lot of access if you have that in Defender. Yeah, so that's the EDR for Microsoft. I won't go too much into Purview, but this is about data loss prevention. Anything more about data or user risk management, that's not the endpoint side. We'll go through Purview. Um, this is not too much related for the incident response side, but it's a sector of it. And we also have Entra, which could be something that you can look more into about analyzing users. If you want to view any user's sign-in logs or audit logs, you can go through Entra, and it gives you a list of everything. So this is kind of like your Active Directory of Azure. So it's pretty cool. Oh, back to the scenario, guys. We have an alert. I'm going to get some audience help here, so pay attention, guys. You are the investigator. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to triage, guys. What does triage mean? Triage is the company slang for investigating an alert. So if you ever hear triage, that's what that means. I was confused in like what that actually means, but that's just, you're just investigating an alert, and the basic end that we're going to try to get is to determine if it's a false positive, true positive, or benign positive. Benign means suspicious but expected, means that we did get an alert and something did happen, but doesn't mean that it's something that we need to take actions on. Like it could be user failed sign-ins multiple times in a short time span. We can investigate to see that it was not actually malicious behavior. The user just messed up and failed their login multiple times. So it did happen, but we don't have to change anything or take actions. So that's what benign is. So you're on Microsoft Sentinel. You get this phishing attempt right here. I put a box around that. So here, how do we analyze a phishing email before we get into that? I'm not going to go too deep into this because I know you guys are cybersecurity students, but you're going to want to look for obvious giveaways. There's urgency or anything about money. You can also look at the sender and the recipient to make sure that like what is the domain that we're getting it from? Is it from our company that we work in, or is it from an outside source? Kind of just like that. There's also metadata, but I'm not going to go too much into that because that's not the focus. So here is the phishing alert. Can anyone, I'll give you guys a second to read it. I'll read it out loud. And I'm going to ask you guys for a question on what makes this, what would you guys classify this based on what you can look at? Would this be malicious or not? So we see that an email from Tyrese Horn at students.first.edu comes in with the subject, redefine the research assistant opportunity in all caps. And by reading the description here, we see that this department in a school is looking for research assistants to work remotely for $350 a week, and send a message to Professor Weissman at number with your name, email, a bunch of information, and they will reach out to you in the application process. Many regards, signed by Professor Weissman. All right, guys. Does anyone have an idea about what would be a sign if you had to investigate this alert, or this email? Any signs that you would think that this could be phishing, or what would you guys think? All right. It seems like you got something. Yeah, so audience member said that they're asking for a lot of personal information. That is a good giveaway, but that's not definitely. We don't know that's exactly phishing, but that is something that like will raise your eyebrows a little bit. It's a good point. Yes, in the back. Yes, that's a good giveaway right there. The signage does not this. It's signed by professor when it's from some student. So that's probably the biggest giveaway. Yes, another one from the crowd. Sure. For the stream, the audience member specified that there's a number given that's for that the email will be have that instead of responding to this through email, you would text an outside number that we would not be able to track in our organization. So those are all good giveaways. You guys figured it out. I think. Oh yes, another one. Of course, yeah. So the sign. We also get the alert saying that it's a caution. It's from outside the system. Um, we have a bunch of different key giveaways. I wouldn't say the caution with the yellow box saying that's outside the system. Definitely makes it definitely makes it malicious. Um, the data doesn't definitely make it malicious, but those are indicating that like this might be phishing. But just because we get an email like that doesn't mean it's actually phishing. But those are really good giveaways. But definitely because the sender is different than who's actually signing at the bottom, and because of the number and because of the urgency that we see, this could be something that we might have to specify as a true positive. Thank you guys for your help on that one. All right. But there's something we have to make clear though. Event versus incident. This is something that everyone in incident response has to know. An event is just a normal change in behavior. This is something that could just be a Windows process saying user signed in here, or user went user opened up Explorer exe, which is the Windows file system. It could just be something like that. That's what an event is. While an incident is something that will actually negatively impact the soft the endpoint. Um, so yeah, that's the difference. Events are always happening. There could just be regular Windows processes. With an actual incident, something negative behavior. That's something you're gonna want to know. All right, another alert, guys. Another alert. This one is different though. We're gonna have a scheduled task creation that's suspicious. So we get, whenever you look at an alert, it'll give you information about the time that it happens, what the alert's on, maybe a description saying like what MITRE technique is involved. Um, don't worry too much about the specifics here. I'm just giving you guys a view. Is like this is what you might like. You'll read the details of the incident before you actually get into it. So you see that this invoice update 2026 PDF.exe, interesting there, right? Is involved with this hash. Now, how are we going to investigate this? How would we go about investigating something like this in a higher view? We're going to look through forensics and analysis because this is an actual software. This is not a phishing email. So one basic, have you guys heard of static analysis? If you take in 201, it's not actually running any software, but it's more looking at it through open source or reading it first and not actually running the program. So one thing you could do is look for grammatical errors. That's something you can do inside a phishing email. Also, maybe something like hovering your mouse over a URL. You could see that it brings you to something else that doesn't say. There's a cool shortcut that if you do Control K, you guys know that, then you can put something above it. So you want to make sure you hover over it first. You don't actually want to click a link. You might want to put into virus total. Have you guys heard of virus total yet? All right, this is one of the probably the most common used tool that you can do static analysis on. You can put in the hash of a file or an IP address um, or a URL into virus total, and it'll run that URL or go to that IP through and test that through a bunch of different sandboxes. The sandboxes could be from like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or Microsoft or even Google, and then there'll be some other random ones. So there's this one on the bottom says 0 out of 71. So there's 71 sandboxes that it ran through. And there's also a details tab that you can see if it's a hash. You can see if the file is signed or not, which could help you see if it's actually a legitimate software. Like if it's signed by Microsoft, then that could be make it look like a more legit process. But if it's not signed, you don't know if that's actually legit or not. Um, there's also a community tab that some people post like what they found when they ran this or when they investigated this. So make sure you check out virus total. There will be other tools. I didn't list them all here, but if you want to check specifically for IPs, you might want to use a website like Spur or like IP Chicken. There's a bunch of different ones that could give you the ISP of the IP, see where it's located in, and see what the domain is. So yeah, those are some static analysis we could do. Some dynamic analysis would be actually running the software or the potentially malware in a sandbox. Um, in a sandbox you can use if your company you work for pays for it. You can get the recorded future triage sandbox, where you can enter the zipped file of the that you would extract that's malicious, and it will send you screenshots of what happens when it runs, and it also gives you a score and what it finds and a bunch of information. So that's a really cool tool. You're gonna want to make sure you do a safe environment. You don't want this that if you actually run a malware, you don't want it to get to your actual device. So let's be safe here. And you don't want to include any personal information when you're trying to do any of this. Personal information is one of the more emphasized in when you're working. You want to make sure you emphasize you're not going to give out any data that you might have from clients or from if you're working in the healthcare industry. You don't want to give patient data out there. So there's a high emphasis on securing data. So you want to make sure you are careful whenever you're gonna copy and paste something into AI or putting something out onto URL scan. You might want to do it. URL scanner is something you can just put the URL in there, and you can run a private scan or a public scan, and then it'll show you screenshots as well. That's a free tool. So if you want to put in anything onto there, it'll show you what comes up and just send you screenshots. Or if it gets an error, it will just not show you. So what do we do if we have a true positive, guys? This is important. We're gonna remediate. These are just some ways that I put down that you could go through remediating your system. For example, if it's a user, right? If the user, let's say, um, their password got stolen, right? The way that we'll go about remediating that user could be revoking any sessions that they have active and resetting their user credentials. For an endpoint, this could be something like removing malicious software and running an antivirus scan. Um, After you would run an antivirus scan, it would then say if any threats were found or if the malware is still on there. So you want to make sure you do that after. And then for the network, maybe you want to block specific IPs or block the hash. These are just some ways that you can remediate, but I figured to put a slide on there because let's say you're in an interview and they ask you, like, what are the steps you do after you investigate, you want to remediate? And of course, there's the lessons learned phase of the NIST framework that I didn't cover, where it'll be like reporting what you found if it's an actual incident, submitting a CVE for it, or whatever it is. So that's an important step, but I won't, All right, so I have a few slides left about one slide I thought could be interesting about different tiers of SOC analysts. Depending on where you're at, maybe everyone is the same tier. Maybe if you're working in a bigger team, you'll have 3 different tiers, and then there will also be CISO and vulnerability management and specific. But for the actual incident responders and for the SOC analysts that will use these EDR tools, you might see tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is like your basic analyst. They will look through whenever an alert comes in, they will look through all the alerts, and they will decide, is this something we need to look more into, or is this something that's benign and we can not spend more time on it? So tier 1, there will be the most, and basic analysis. If they think it could be something to look into, they will escalate it to the next tier. Tier 2 is the further analysis of the alert. We know that this could be something that might actually be malicious or might actually be an incident. So tier 2 will do the next analysis of it to confirm whether it is or not. With tier 2, the more tiers you have, the more access you will have to the software. Like tier 1, maybe you won't have access to maybe you won't be able to run an antivirus scan. Maybe you can't take any endpoint actions because you don't have the perms to do that. With tier 2, you should have a lot more perms and a lot more permissions to actually investigate further that tier 1 would not be able to. So tier 1 would be a lot more, you'd want to find information about the user, about the endpoint, like what type of device is it, what is the user's job, does the job align with their actions that happened in the alert. Tier 2 would actually maybe be able to, let's say, reach out to the user or actually like quarantine the file from the device. And tier 3 is, if there is a tier 3 and where you work, it will be the actual incident responder. This is something that we know something went wrong, and these people that are tier 3 know exactly how to react and remediate and go about an actual incident happening. This could be maybe like an emergency security company that if let's say basic company one gets hacked and they don't have any security team, they might reach out to like a cybersecurity hotline, which are just like tier 3 analysts that will just step in and like help remediate their systems. And my last slide I got is what knowledge, or what I guess good practices might be a better word for it, for you to be a good analyst. You want to understand different attacks and threats. Look at the recent security news is important. If you're taking an interview on SOC analyst, you want to be able to talk about whatever's recently happening, whatever attacks are happening. Maybe a current war could be targeting a specific industry. So those, I guess those companies in that specific industry might want to be more proactive and looking more towards these specific attacks. So you want to make sure you look at a little bit of security news just to see what's going on. Eventually, as you do more and more alerts, you will understand how to investigate it and like what actually happens, or like what commonly happens. How about that? Yeah, that's the first bullet. For forensics, I guess you want to understand how to analyze a phishing email, which we did before. You want to understand about what you want to, like how to look through a specific, like let's say you're looking through an actual malware, you're going to want to understand how to analyze that, see where it came from, see where it spread. Yeah, so just having a trying to figure. You can learn this as you go too, because if you're trying to do forensics on actual things, someone will walk you through it as well. I hope if you're the only person managing that, then that'll be a good time. But also another thing could be trying to learn different software. If you're going to be an incident responder for one place, they might have different software than the next place. But there is an overall idea that if you know how to look through one software, or if you've been doing this for a while, it's not that hard to learn a different one. You just have to know where to look or what their specific query language is. That can take a little time to get familiar with, but if you have the ideas of how to or like what to look for or how to investigate an alert, you'll be fine. The most common one is Azure's Sentinel and Defender. I'm not sure too much about how much online sources there are to look into for that, but that's probably the most commonly used one you will get. CrowdStrike Falcon might be number 2. I think IBM Q Radar might be 3, or Sentinel 1. Those two might, like, those are all like the top ones. There's also Splunk, and I guess more sim tool would be Cribble. There's a bunch of tools there that if you want to impress, let's say, someone that might hire you, you want to say, I did research on all these tools, or you get some type of hands-on experience, but it's hard to get hands-on experience until you actually like get to that position to actually mess around. And the last one is communication. There will be a lot of alerts, and you want to be able to have good communication about, I found this, and you want to be able to, you can always ask people for help if you're working with other people in that. But there'll be different alerts that come in that will probably require you to say something, or if multiple alerts come in for the same like device, you want to say, oh, this device also got alerted on this, make sure to watch for this, or whatever it might be. All right. That's all I got today. Thanks, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you. Any questions? No? All right. Thanks, guys.
Hello, hello. Okay. Demos will be posted. I think demos are up right now. If you want to check on the website, you can go do that. Otherwise, it is social hour right now. Pizza should be here soon. Actually, it won't be here soon. It's only 12:40. It'll be here around 1 p.m. if you want to stick around for that. Otherwise, I can review your resume if you want me to, or do whatever. It's social hour. So thank you. Oh, Adam.
I'll also be around if you guys want to talk about anything that's in response or anything about what I do. Because right now it's my lunch break. I'm here till maybe 12:50. So yeah.
Testing.